This is the Thrive With Us podcast. This is the bass music.
Sponsored by Ralph's Crispy Crunchy Chicken, home of the three-piece tendy.
Nice. That's just too fun. It's very loud, though. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off now.
It's pretty loud.
Anywho, this is our first podcast. Well,
Episode 1. We've had a 0.5.
We actually had a second. Actually, this is the third now. We recorded a whole podcast, and I didn't know what I was doing. So here we are again.
Take 2, baby.
Yeah, take 2. That's better. So, we're going to try again. My finger feels like it's about to fall off. So
tell us what happened to your finger, Nick.
So, as most of you already probably know, Nicole and I have 7 dogs. 2 of them decided to get into a little tussle, which I should have just stayed out of, but I decided to put my hand in the pit bull, his mouth, and she
into the mouth.
Destroyed my finger. You can't see. I mean, if you're listening to it, just know that my pinky looks like a balloon. If you're watching, I don't know if you can see that, but anywho. So, first episode, what are we doing, Nicole?
Today, we are going to be talking about, because of course there's all sorts of deep-rooted issues that we have to go over. We're going to be talking about Nick's journey leading up until 2013 when we bought the shop, our first shop, Anderson Automotive. So let's start way back when in 1992.
1992. So I think what we're going to do, just to add on to that, is we're going to do an episode with me, my story, Nicole's, and then kind of both of ours through, just to get kind of set the stage. So you know us if you're listening. So, I was born in 1992 in Redding, California. Imagine that. Haven't strayed far away. Mercy Hospital. Shout out to Mercy. 1992. I was born, so that was fun. I don't remember it. Every time you ask me this question, I just draw a blank after that. And grew up with my mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad was a shop owner. Nicole and I own 2 automotive shops, if you don't know us. So I guess it kind of runs in the family. Grew up in a shop. Basically, had a pretty normal childhood. Shout out to my parents. But, about the age of, between the age of 0 and 12 or 13, not much happened. I was just a normal kid. Loved building stuff. That was always my jam. I would always tell my brother, like, let's go build something. He's like, yeah, okay. And then he'd kind of like become uninterested, but I was always into it. I was always hustling stuff. At the age of 14, maybe, I fly RC helicopters, and I couldn't afford them. My dad was super helpful. He would always do the best he could with RC cars, helicopters, everything. But they're expensive, and I wanted, of course, every single one of them because I'm obsessive. But
I actually wrote that word down here, obsessed.
Okay, well, thanks.
Because I feel like that plays a big part in your journey of people always saying that you've been obsessed and always thinking that it's a bad thing, but it's actually like strength and a weakness, right? But
yeah, for sure. It can definitely be a weakness, but it's definitely a part of my, like this podcast studio. I kind of set this
full-bore
whole
research.
Thing up. Yeah, and
hours and hours and hours of research.
A lot of research.
It's crazy what we can do with YouTube now.
It is crazy.
As far as, I taught myself how to completely create a profit and loss and be an accountant pretty much on YouTube.
I figured a lot of, it's funny because you'll get people who are like, I would say not professional mechanics, be like, oh yeah, YouTube mechanic. Guess what? I've learned a ton off you. You have to have base knowledge, but anywho, where was that in the story? I forgot.
You were obsessed with RC helicopters.
Oh yeah. So at the age of like 14, I decided that I wanted more helicopters, and to do that, I would figure something out. I've always been like, I remember one time I wanted some bike pedals. I was into bikes. So I went through my whole house and scavenged for change everywhere. Asked my mom what I could do. She's like, "Yeah, clean the bathroom. I'll give you $5." I scrounged up like the $40 it took to get those. Rode over to the bike shop. They're still in business today, and bought me some. They were clipless pedals, which actually have clips. Kind of a confusing thing, but I was racing BMX. But anyway, I wanted to get more RC helicopters, so I made a resume at 14, and I just found it the other day. I think I showed it to you.
Before ChatGPT existed.
Yeah. You can always tell when someone's done that. But I made a resume and sent it to every helicopter place I could find. I mean, all the companies, all the manufacturers, everything, right? I just sent this resume. It's funny because I went back in my email, like, I don't know, it's probably 6 months ago, and just looked at all the emails I was sending off and how interesting that was.
And I think a lot of people don't realize what RC helicopters are. They think that they're these tiny little toys that are just like little Tonka, like remote control, but they're very...
How dare you?
And they're absolutely nearly impossible. I can't fly them. I instantly crash every time when I would play with your simulator.
Yeah.
But they are very much not little kid toys. They are...
Yeah,
huge.
it's a serious hobby.
They are dangerous. They have huge rotors.
Yes.
Nick got mad at me the other day because I called them propellers.
Yesterday. But
Yeah.
That's true.
I offended the
It's a
helicopter
rotor
guru.
blade, but yeah, and it's so true. As like I would, and sure enough, somebody, this helicopter company, it's called Heli Direct. They're pretty large now. They're still in business. They hit me back up, and as a 14-year-old kid, I convinced them that I could do their returns and like technical support. So I would sit in my room and answer the phone on Skype as a 14 to 15-year-old kid with grown men calling me or women, whoever. Mostly men fly RC helicopters for some reason.
And you had this like big like plywood
desk,
man-made
my
or
whole
handmade desk.
all the helicopters were hanging from the ceiling and stuff. And
it was a whole vibe.
I would just answer the phone and freaking do all the returns for this, like the whole back end of their site. I mean, I would do all of that. And I was like 15, 14 years old. And I remember my parents were kind of like, whatever. And then they paid me on PayPal. Like there was no like formal setup. So they sent me like $1,500. And my dad's like, oh shit. Like this is serious. And I would just sit there and answer the phone. And that's when I stopped also going to high school, which was a whole other ordeal. And that same company ended up flying me and my dad out to Chicago for me to fly those RC helicopters in like this. It's called the iHobby Expo. It was in whatever the big event center is in Chicago. I can't remember what it was called. But they flew us out, paid for everything. And then at the time, my dad's shop was struggling, so he could barely leave. But he's like, I've got to do this, So he came with me. I mean, I was only 14, little dumb kid. And I talked to a bunch of vendors there face to face. Flew my helicopter indoors. Wasn't as good as all the other guys there. Boy, there's some talent there for sure.
Well, you were definitely talented.
I was
That's
good
why
at it, but there's guys on a different level. They're still fly today too.
Attracted,
for sure. Yeah, I sent with the resume. I sent a bunch of YouTube videos like of me flying in my front yard. Remember when I always used to fly in the front yard, and then we came back, and then they paid me for it. And I remember my dad was just like, "Holy shit!" They paid me $1,000. I still kind of hold it against my dad because he took half of it, but I'm sure he needed it. But pissed me off for a while. But
I remember when we were 15 when we started dating, and your friend, you were like, I think you had given, because you had stopped going to Enterprise by then. Like we had met kind of like in a class. We never talked at school. We were both super shy, only used MySpace to communicate after hours. And we also talked a lot about cats. That was like my first memory of you. We talked for
Oliver.
Like 4 hours about cats.
I used to love Oliver.
You said that you used to put a bonnet on one of them.
Oliver. Yeah.
Anyway, you had, I think, given your friend the okay to like try to pursue me, like, hey, reach out to Nicole and see if...
God, I wasn't going to do it.
Yeah.
I was
like,
a dirty RC helicopter
see
guy.
if, she's interested in me. And in gym class one day, they were like saying all these weird code words to me, like yam and bones. And I was like, I don't know what the heck they were talking about, but...
My friends are weird.
But those are like Nick's nicknames. That's confusing.
Yeah.
And-
Yam, side story. Yam, I had a trampoline as a kid, and my parents, being the 13-year-old I was, had me put it completely together. And when I did, there was like these U-bolts. They're like bolts that hold on the net, and I put them facing outward. So all my friends were over at my house. I stepped off the trampoline, and one of the bolts just tore my leg open. I think I got 13 stitches on my 13th birthday. Nice. I just had to leave instantly.
They did that on purpose.
Yeah. It's so funny because like I put them all outward, not thinking how dangerous that was. So it looks like a big Y, and so Luke, one of my best friend, and he would write AM after it, like yam, for some reason. So that's what they call me.
Yeah, it was Mike Teeples that was like reaching out to me in gym class, and then he was like,
Mike Teeples.
Yeah, he was the
wingman. The wingman.
He was like, yeah, but there's like this big secret. Nick's really embarrassed. He doesn't want you to know, but he flies RC helicopters.
You're expecting like
he's
disabled. He's mentally disturbed.
Like, oh my gosh, what is he gonna say? And I was like, and he was like, yeah, he works for this company and he flies RC helicopters. And I was just like, oh, okay. I don't get it. Why is he embarrassed? I'm like, that's cool. He has a job. Like, that's
always used to make
freaking
fun of me for
amazing.
It was a whole thing because my name was Hellyman13 on the internet, and Luke used to be like, "What's up, Hellyman13?"
That's hilarious.
But anywho, so
that was like a huge part of your upbringing, though.
I still fly RC helicopters to this day. And
like for you to work that young is a pretty big deal, and you weren't just like working at Walmart or you were like.
I got paid
a lot.
hustling. And it was stupid that I left. So then, come around 15-ish. I'm bad at timelines because I can't fully remember. I just stopped going. I was just an idiot kid. I was such a butthead.
You were young. Yeah.
God, I was a butthead. I don't even want to get into all that. But yeah, basically just stopped going to that. And then at that point, I kind of stopped going to high school as well. So I did freshman year, and then sophomore year, I went for about 2 months because I switched from Enterprise to Foothill. That's when I kind of asked Nicole out officially. We had met in freshman year, but sophomore year was kind of when we kind of,
made it official.
And shout out to MySpace. But
yeah, if it weren't for MySpace, if that didn't exist back then, we wouldn't exist.
Yeah. So I decided to convince my parents that I should go to independent study, and I would just go there, and the teacher was not a very good teacher. She would just let me come in. I didn't do anything. I knew I could get her off subject about, I don't even remember what, but then it would just be like, yeah, I did some stuff. And I'd sit there and like read this book that it was just so uninteresting to me. And then I just stopped going, and I'm kind of, rushing through the story, not fully, but I basically just slept and did not a whole lot of anything for the next couple years. I lived behind the school Nicole went to, which is Enterprise High School. So every day at lunch, I would just ride my bike or walk there, and then I would just go there at lunch. So all my friends and everything thought I was still going to high school. That's why everyone's like, you were in high school? Like, yeah, I would just come for lunch. So, like, no one ever inter-talked. Like, is Nick in first period with you? No. Is Nick in first period with you? No. Like, wait, where's Nick?
Everyone thought you went to Enterprise.
Yeah, so they all thought I was there, including the teachers and staff.
Yeah.
Like, they would see me at lunch and not even think anything
because they knew who you were, and you just blended
there.
in, right? You were the same age and everything. And it's funny because you just came to just hang out with me during lunch because I went through a period of time where I didn't have any friends and I was a loser. And so I was like, Nick, please come hang out with me at lunch.
Well, I mean, I was also like, young love, Yeah. But, so me and Nicole would hang out at lunch, and then she would try to dump me like every week, which was kind of disheartening.
I think that was like way later on. Okay.
Yeah. Well, before
I was
that,
well, there was a time when we first started dating that I had never had a boyfriend before. So we started dating. I think you were going to Foothill then still. And I was like, oh, long distance relationship. I don't think it's going to work out.
Long distance.
So anyway, a month had gone by and after we started dating and we never hung out, not once. And I was just like, this is kind of weird. What is this? What's happening?
Who is this?
Where I'm just dating this stranger. And then I tried to break up with him over text and he refused to let it happen. He didn't take no for an answer.
I do not take no for an answer. I don't.
And I was like, all right, we'll see what happens. And, we both put in more effort to hang out. And then fast forward many years later, we were breaking up all the time, senior year.
Oh, yeah.
I remember I broke up with you actually over RC helicopters because you ditched me on Halloween to
Cars.
go. Was it cars? Okay,
Yeah,
it was RC cars to go hang out with your RC car friend and didn't hang out with me on Halloween. And I was like, that's it. We're done.
We're building a
We're
racetrack.
done, man.
It was fun.
This is it.
I get it. I get locked onto something. It's I remember that day we were his dad had a quad. And we were pulling to make a little sprint track. And I'm like, I don't want to leave because I get excited about stuff. But
yeah.
So, yeah.
But even when we broke up, we still texted every day, and you would end up bringing me those wheat snacks that I was talking about last podcast episode.
Without spoiling Nicole's story, I mean, you came from a different place.
I was very unstable emotionally.
And yeah, I mean,
to be continued. You'll find out more about that later.
You definitely came from a different spot than I did, but yeah. So me and Nicole got together in basically freshman, sophomore year, which was 17 years ago.
Good job.
Thank you.
We don't even count. I personally don't count when we got married. We got married at the core. I'm like, I'm not gonna remove all those years that we poured into our relationship. And everyone's like, when'd you get married? I'm like, I don't know.
We didn't do a wedding. We're totally weird.
We went to Africa instead.
Exactly. Rather spend the money doing that than all this weird crap that America tells you need. But that's a whole other. We won't get weird right now. Keep watching.
Plus, we're both don't look at me.
We were a lot. I was way worse back then.
Yeah.
I remember that for sure. I was so shy. Yeah.
So I'm like,
Yeah. It was.
The
we
whole
just went to the
thing's
courthouse and my mom was there. Was
Yeah.
my dad there?
My dad was. At the time, we were actually planning on having a wedding still. So we were like, we'll keep this under wraps. No one's going to know.
Because we got married for tax purposes.
Yeah. And it was...
Businessman right here.
It was on a Wednesday. And we... and we got married in our work. We were both wearing Anderson Automotive polos.
Hell yeah.
And it was our anniversary from when we started dating. So it was November 16th. And so we're like, let's just do it on November 16th and we'll have the same day.
Yeah.
And then we ended up just not doing a wedding because we slowly started shifting our mindset on weddings and I don't know.
They're a huge, I mean, we'll get in, I'm sure, in later episodes, but to me, people go into huge debt for some magical ceremony. I get whatever's important to you. I spend money on stupid crap myself that I'm sure other
some people
RC
value it,
helicopters, But to me, I just thought I'd rather go do something. Let's go.
And we
to
were
Africa
already in pretty deep debt.
Yeah,
from the shop.
Again,
so
that's a whole other a little precursor. Yeah.
So
you mean things weren't always just easy? Life isn't just always easy for you? Somebody messaged me the other day and said, I put a picture of me and you in the airplane because we were going to Nashville. And this, but I just got to share it because it's just annoying. Wow, life must be real easy. Buddy, you have no idea.
It just makes me laugh anymore when I see
that kind of stuff just fuels me, to be honest. But it's
tell that to your brain tumor that's caused by stress.
Yeah, exactly. I could give you some stories, but the reason you think that is why. Yeah. Anywho, that was disheartening. Anywho, so come around 18 years old. So I stopped going to high school. Basically, I'll just keep that short. I just slept. I was a loser.
You were working at your dad's shop a little bit, right?
That's true. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would go there, but I was a terrible employee. I remember he would he would schedule people. I remember particularly he scheduled this Cadillac to get a radiator on a Saturday, and he was he was there, he was strapped to it, right? So he's like, "You'll come in, just go in at 8, meet him there, check him in, do the radiator, check him out, so he could get paid and have a day off and everything." And I just didn't show up to the guy. I just showed up 10. He wasn't there. I didn't think that was a huge deal. My mom would always give me shit. You're always late. But anywho, fast forward to like 18, and I was still working with my dad a little bit. I had procured a Vespa, which the guy that worked for my dad was an older guy named Lou. Shout out Lou. Rest in peace. Love that guy. A little weird sometimes, but old mechanic style guy. I mean, he wore the black shirt with like the pocket shirt with the cigarettes in it. Just chain smoked underneath cars. Like doesn't matter. You're pulling a fuel pump. He's fucking chain smoking. You're like, Lou, this is I've been doing this for years. So Lou, he decides his friend gave him this Vespa, a little red Vespa, and he was rebuilding this Ford pickup in my dad's shop. And he's like, hey, I need help. I'll give you the Vespa. You help me out. So I helped him out. I don't even remember what I did. We put like a 302 in this Ford pickup. I was like 16 or 17 years old. Just doing that. Still don't really know what my parents were thinking because I wasn't going to school. I think they thought I was going to home study, but I definitely wasn't.
I think you had a bad case of the third child syndrome where,
me too.
Same with me. I was the third child.
They were going through it.
Parents are burnt out. They're like, you'll make it.
Yeah, he had like sold a shop and it went sideways and he had to reopen a shop, and him and my brother were kind of, him and my brother are always in coots or whatever. I was kind of on the outside, but he, Lou gave me that Vespa, and I figured out that you could go get them. So before that, I had been caught driving without a license twice in my brother's truck. Again, I'm trying to keep things
One
straight.
of the times you were driving to one of my band performances, though. So
That's true.
You were trying to do a good deed.
That's true. Yeah. I remember we were
He was a great boyfriend.
Another side story. We were driving down 44, and then, a cop gets behind me. My friend Ian's in the car, and he obviously knows. I don't have my license. We're just screwing around. We went to your performance, and the cop gets behind me. He's like, "Oh, Nick. Oh, no, Nick, no." And he's almost crying. And I'm like, whenever I get caught doing something, I don't like it. Of course not. But I'm always just like, well, there it is. Like I knew this was gonna happen. I'm not gonna lie or fight it, or you know what I mean. It is what it is. So he's like damn near crying, and we get finally the cop follows me off the freeway. I turn left on Victor, and then I get back on the freeway. Like he's just gonna stop following me in this truck that's not registered.
Trying
and
to
everything else.
lose him.
Yeah, no, obviously he pulled me over. They towed the truck and everything. So anywho, got the Vespa. Figured out you could get a motorcycle permit without doing anything. All you'd have to do there is go without doing anything physical, like driving. I didn't want to do like the motorcycle test. So you go in there and you just take a written test. You get a motorcycle permit. You can drive anywhere. You just can't drive at night or with a passenger. So I did that. And that Vespa, that thing was a killer, dude. I drive that everywhere. I probably put 5,000 miles on that thing. I used to carry a car battery underneath the seat because it wouldn't start when it was cold. Come to find out, it was just a valve adjustment. But
yeah, you used to piss my neighbors off at the El Portal townhouse.
Yeah. Just
cranking on it super late at night.
It would take like 20 minutes, and then I fixed it later. But when I figured out what was wrong, but that thing was sick. I rode it everywhere. Everyone knew me as a Vespa guy. I'd ride that thing everywhere, man. Ended up getting a motorcycle later, but that's a whole other side story. But got the Vespa, was 18-ish at that point. Decided shit, I didn't go to high school, but I didn't really think that mattered because I knew I don't take no for an answer. I'll just things. Somehow my parents put something in my brain that's like, oh, that doesn't matter. Whatever they say doesn't matter. No is just ask again, do again. Well, I'm not going to take no. You know what I mean? So I felt like that was going to be helpful for me. Maybe I wasn't thinking big picture. So
yeah, I think you watched them live that,
my dad,
right?
My dad doesn't take no.
Your dad had gone through some troubles with his business and just didn't take no for an answer and got through a really hard situation,
Yep.
And just made it happen.
Yeah, he would just. I mean, yeah, I always think about that. Where did I get that from? For sure. Part of what sparked this was when I was 18, my parents ended up getting 3 of my nieces and nephews as foster children.
They were your cousins. Yeah.
Yeah. It's confusing. A little family drama, substance abuse, of course.
Domestic violence. Yeah.
Domestic violence. Yeah. And so they got them when I was 18, and they were also getting evicted from their house because they defaulted on their mortgage. And my dad didn't have much money then. He was still struggling with his shop. And I remember, but he just found a place, like he found a place to rent. And then we were like there, and I was like 18 at the time. And I'm like, so like, okay, this one's my room. And they're like, no, like you don't get a room. I'm like, oh shit. And then I kind of was like, damn, I'm gonna have to like do something, you know? And I knew I'd like cars a little bit, but I really like helicopters. So I I drove around my Vespa. Sorry, my freaking earbuds all messed up. I drove my Vespa around, and I went to the helicopter school and airport. And I went in there, and I remember this day for some reason really well in my brain, because I felt like it was like one of those pivoting moments.
Point, yeah.
Yeah. And I remember the guy just like basically talked me out of it. He was just like, no, it's just so expensive. If you're not, like, basically go into the military or don't fly helicopters for a living. And I'm like, don't really want the military. Don't know why. Really can't figure out why.
I was so close to joining or trying to join the Navy. The Navy recruiter comes in senior year, and they're just great salespeople.
I mean, it's not a bad
like,
deal,
oh,
right?
yeah.
I kind of always think like why I didn't do that. It was just off the table. I guess I just didn't want to. So I went across the airport. There used to be another little like place, because I'm like, well, I'm not going to take that as an answer. And that guy basically told me the same thing, other than if you flew a Cessna for a while, you could get hours, but my parents didn't have any money. And I was like, well, fuck, I can't afford that. Like, how am I going to get that? So I found like a school in Concord, California that was doing like helicopter flight training, but it just didn't seem realistic. Everyone that I would talk to that did that, they said you had to have so many hours and blah, blah, blah. I could have done it, but for some reason I didn't. I think it was because I needed to like do something now, and I knew that, like, to make money. So then somehow I got hung up on WowTech. My brother went to UTI, so
Maybe that's what it was. Yeah, because you always said, I always heard you say, I'll never be a mechanic. I don't want to work on cars. I'll never.
Careful what you say.
Yeah, but it just goes to show like
15 years later,
the power of influence, right? Of you grew up in a shop. Your dad was an auto mechanic.
Was good at it. I love it.
You
I don't know
learned.
why I would say that. I really don't.
It's probably just one of those like teenage rebellious things. Like, I don't want to do what my parents did. I want to do something different. You know?
Yeah, it's that was a weird one. So anywho, WowTech has killer recruiters, kind of like what you just described the Navy as. And I'm gonna check this real quick.
Is it backwards?
I think I had those on backwards.
Ooh, I wonder if mine's backwards.
Let me see. No, yours is on
I didn't
right.
even check at all.
My ear wasn't fitting in it. Well, that's embarrassing. Anywho, everybody's probably looking at it. But
My funky ear fits just perfectly fine.
if you're watching, I'm retarded. So, or
Don't say that word.
I know
It's
I'm
a
not
cuss word.
not smart. Yeah, I know that is a bad word. I don't like saying it. I don't know why it comes out.
Slip sometimes. We grew up in the, early 2000s
Yeah,
era.
that's true. But, yeah, the WowTech recruiter was killer, dude. He came by. He'd give you $100 bills, like, just to go check WowTech. I went and checked it out. It was amazing. I'm like, well, I can do this. Remember, I always told you, like, I'm going to just learn this skill, and then I'll do something else. Like, this will just be something I fall back on. I just knew we needed money because you were getting kicked out at the exact same time, right?
Yeah. If you think back on it, it was a stepping stone, right? Because you don't physically work on cars anymore.
Yeah, but it's my identity.
We're in the industry for sure still.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember like just one day, I think I had just graduated high school. And I'm sure that pressure was on you too, like just seeing everyone graduate and you kind of were not in the loop on that, you know?
Yeah, I remember that. That kind of hit. Like, it was cool up until that day when everyone was like getting excited.
With the caps and the gowns and everyone's celebrating and you were kind of like left out.
Yeah, it was kind of like, oh shit, well, that sucks.
Yeah. But you just randomly, you were like, I'm moving to Sacramento. I'm going to go to WildTech. And at that time, my home life, like both my sisters, my older sisters moved back in. And we were all living in this.
You had like 15 cats.
Small space. We all had cats. And I also brought Gretchen and Junebug home. So we had 2 dogs and like 7 to 9 cats. I don't remember. And none of them, they were all terrible at using the restroom the way they should have. So it was just.
So it smelled like absolute biohazard.
That's hazardous, yes.
Yeah, I remember.
Very
that.
hazardous.
Just like, oh my God, it's
But then,
terrible.
it's like, I feel like siblings, you're only supposed to live with them for so long, and it was
Especially
very
your
toxic.
families.
Yeah.
You remember you and your sister got into a fight one time, and I'd never Me and my brother used to get in fist fights too, but you guys were older and it was over a phone charger. Remember that?
Yeah.
Just freaking went through a door, went through another door.
We were like tumbling, like Peter Griffin and the chicken, like tumbling through rooms.
I'm like, oh,
and
shit.
Nick was just watching, like, what do I do?
Yeah. I remember like, stop it.
Spray water.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good stuff.
But that's because she stole my phone charger and then her cat ate it and broke it. I think my phone was charging overnight and that's when she took it. And I had just found out my friend's dog died. So I was very emotional and then I ended up attacking. But anyway, I was like, oh my God, no, you can't move away. Like you can't leave me behind.
Yeah.
I was so sad.
And then you got FAFSA and ended up getting an apartment while I was gone and a job basically right at the same time. That's why I think I remember a lot of
that was a little bit later. That was when you were about to graduate because you went to graduate Wyotech.
Well, you were definitely working at PetSmart, right?
I was going to move with you. We had gone to Sacramento, looked at your apartment, and then we kind of started visualizing if I was going to come and live with you. And I was kind of getting excited, like we can make this work with Gretchen and Junebug and Brutus. We had 3 dogs. And then I got a call from PetSmart to interview for a job position there in the grooming salon, and I was so excited, like, oh my gosh, this is my big break.
Yeah.
I was working at Little Caesars then, but anyway, and then I ended up staying.
It was a big break at that point, though.
Yeah. And then fast forward to when you were graduating, that's when I ended up getting my FAFSA, moved out, got an apartment, and then it was ready basically for when you moved back.
So yeah, I went to Wyotech, loved it. I remember Wyotech hit and it was like, whoa.
And you were like the best student, right?
Yeah, literally we took the test and like right when I showed up, you take like an aptitude test and I just like knew everything on it. I was like, because Ohm's law is a big thing in cars. It's like number one. If you don't know Ohm's law, you should, because that's how cars work. And helicopters use Ohm's law too. So I knew exactly how amps, resistance, and all that stuff worked. And I took it, and I remember they like made me a tutor. And I was like, well, this is kind of weird. Like I didn't graduate high school.
Yeah, you were like that high school junkie, you know? And then you went from that to being like the best student in your class.
So weird, you know? And yeah, it's just, that was funny.
Perfect attendance and everything.
Yep. Yeah, I got over 100% in all the classes. I got perfect attendance except for one day when I thought that school started at one point and it didn't, which was my own stupid fault. Love that, though. The power of doing something that you love is so powerful. Oh, my God. Like, I hated high school. I could always do the tests. I was never, like, struggling, like, academically. It wasn't a huge issue. I just hated it. But as soon as we started doing, lectures, same stuff, papers, like, but it was on something I loved. Mm-hmm. Holy shit. Find something you like. Because you will freaking excel. Like, quit. I think it's so crazy how we take kids and we try to put them in that box of like, you need to do this, like, or you have ADHD if you don't do this, because you need to sit here and do a book report on a book you don't give a fuck about at all. You know what I mean? And like, it's so true. I get it. You have to have some discipline, but like, how crazy is the school system? There was nothing. There was no car stuff. I remember when I was in 4th grade, we did electricity, and that was, like, cool, you know? And, like, 7th grade, we built, like, a project, and I loved that. But other than that, it was, like, you know, you build the castle, and I, like, put lights on it and shit. And I always liked stuff like that. And, like, if you're a kid like that, you don't get that. That's one of my life passions. I want to fix that for kids. Like, damn. They just shove you in those classrooms and, like,
make you sit for 8 hours in the day. And
that's not how my brain works. I hate it. But you put me at Wyotech, which, God, we'd go out there and work on the car. I remember they would like set cars up with issues. I freaking love that. Like, it wasn't even like school. It was like, wow, this is just legitimately fun. But anyhow, get off my soapbox on that. So went to Wyotech, graduated, National Technical Honor Society, baby. And when I graduated, I was actually a master certified technician. I got it while I was at Wyotech so I could show up and have my badge on like a total
just be
jerk.
Ready.
What I did, I freaking super glued it to my thing because I couldn't do anything else. But it was super cool, actually. I have lived in an apartment with first I started with an apartment with like 6 dudes, and it was like a 2-bedroom apartment. And Biotech would hustle those apartments, so they'd buy an apartment complex, and then they rent you rooms for like $500. But the room was actually a bed in a room with 3 other dudes. You remember that? Mm-hmm. And they were all super cool.
I only saw the one, and then you guys moved, so I never ended up seeing the other setup that you guys had.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because you had your own room when I went to visit you.
Oh, okay. You never saw the first one then?
I think there was a second one before you moved in with Dawn. Mm-mm. Oh.
Nope. I went straight from there to Dawn. Oh, well, I lived on Dawn's couch for a while for free because that was cool. So I was like, screw this. Like, I don't want to pay $400 or $500 for a bed. And then Dawn was like, hey, my couch is open. Like, I'm like, dude, sounds great. Like, they were doing something with those apartments. I can't remember the details, but I just lived on his couch, and we would get $1,000 a month to live off of. So I'm like, well, cool. Like, now I have 1,000 instead of, 300.
Yeah. I remember when I went to visit, or when I went with you to move, we were the first ones to get there before the roommates, and we were like super stoked for some reason. And like,
well, it's exciting.
Yeah.
Like, you never.
And we were like scrubbing, like let's clean the walls, and we like started scrubbing the walls down. Like, who does that?
I don't remember that until you said it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I do remember.
Why are we scrubbing the walls down?
I mean,
Is that
I get why you're scrubbing the walls down. That shit was nasty. So. Yeah, that was fun though. Like, and then I found out Dawn had a roommate, and he was supposed to he wasn't going to Biotech. He was supposed to do something, but he was just kind of a pile, and he ended up moving out. So I took the room. It was like $400 or $500 a month. It was $450 because it was $900 for the whole thing, and I was like super stoked. And I brought Brutus with me every weekend. Every weekend I'd go back to Reading every weekend to hang out with Nicole with my dog Brutus. And
Brutus the cattle dog.
Yep. He'd ride in my front seat of my S10. I just had a 2-seater S10, me and him, dude. He would wait for me when I went to school for 9-10 hours a day. He was in his kennel. Loved Brutus.
He was a good boy.
Brutus.
He was that obnoxious dog that you wanted to,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I used to take him to the tennis court and throw the ball. I scared the crap out of somebody one night. Like, this lady was out there walking her dog, and he ran up to her, and she screamed like I never heard anyone scream before in my life.
Yeah, and he crapped himself.
He did, yeah. It was terrifying. But, yeah, R.I.P. Brutus.
Yeah, he was, I think he was our second dog, right? And then I adopted Junebug after him, so that we had the 3.
We got Brutus when I lived with my parents at their original house before they got
adopted.
We were dumb. That was stupid. But
yeah, his name was Mr. Jones from Haven Humane, right?
Yeah, but we made up my brother's house to let him, hopefully they don't listen, but I made up my brother's house to make an address to get him. But I kept him for his whole life, so I don't give up on nothing, man. So got done with that, graduated Biotech, got out, went back to my dad's shop. He had a transmission shop. So I was like, okay, I learned all about transmissions. I'm going to rebuild transmissions. That's how it's going to go. Like, I like it. It was fun. All the work was there. He would have a transmission to rebuild. Lou, the old guy that was there, I don't remember what happened at that point, but he seemed like he wasn't around as much. So I would, so I started rebuilding transmissions. I fixed a few, actually. Fresh out of school, never done anything. My dad was just like, I was missing second gear. And I'm like, yeah, I got this. Pull it apart. I fixed a few. I did a Ford Taurus, and it never worked again. Don't know what happened there. Still don't know.
Do you think that you actually learned physically how to work on cars a lot in school?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And that what connected to me was I had already physically. My dad's real good about hey, just go do that. I've told you, he would take I'm 17 years old, and he takes a customer's car in for a timing chain, and he's like, do the timing chain. I'm like, I don't even know what a fucking timing chain is. I just know how to take shit apart innately. I don't know. I feel like after working with so many younger techs throughout the years, some people just have that and some people don't. You can't there's I'm a true believer that anybody can do anything they want, though.
Some people have to try a lot harder than
exactly.
others.
Some people
are just more natural at it. Maybe they were, like you grew up in a shop. Some people went to that school that didn't, and it just didn't connect for them as easily.
Yeah, and he would have me just do that. My dad's real big on you're just gonna do it. You
gotta learn.
No help. Yeah. He'll just, if you're gonna swim, he just pushes you in the pool and you swim. Literally, that literally happened to me. Or hey, the stove's hot. Hey, the stove's hot. Oh, you don't believe me? Here, put your hand in the stove. Legitimately. Mm-hmm. And that stuff works, man. Whatever. I don't believe in the new, I mean, I get where it comes from because there's a lot of trauma that goes on and, you know, shoving you in a pool. But it works, man, because life does not freaking give you the chance to decide sometimes, like, I'm going to prepare for this. Oh, it'll take it easy on me. Life just fucking hands you whatever it is. You got to deal with it. If you aren't ready, I'm so glad my parents readied me.
Yeah.
You know? There's
and
plenty
like
of
on
things
that
didn't do
subject
right, but
too. Yeah. You said that, like, you know, I'm sure there's trauma involved in that, but I feel like sometimes like that trauma just,
you got to have it. You can't avoid it.
Yeah.
Life's going to give you trauma.
And then it also like shapes us into who we are and it like fuels us.
Dude,
you know?
life is going to give you trauma. Life is going to put things like, it's crazy to me. This is a side. Again, we're getting off track, but I think it's important. It's like we take kids and then we're like, oh, don't let them feel pain. Don't let them hurt. And I get it. Like, as a parent, like, as my dogs, of course I don't want them to hurt.
Yeah,
but like,
if you look at Trevor, he's just this little bubble boy.
Exactly. He would be a terrible human, honestly, you know? But like,
he's a terrible dog, too.
Yeah,
but I love him.
But it's like, we just try to avoid that so hard. And then it's like, they get out and they're 18 and now they don't know how anything works. They can't. Like, it's just crazy. Like,
you were telling me the other day about your mom, how she, when you were, I don't even know how old you were really little, where you were being a little turd in the backseat of the car and you had these cookies and she asked for one and you told her no. And then she like started fake crying and like you had hurt her feelings.
Yeah.
And didn't that just like stick with you like so deeply?
I would wake up in the middle of the night and think about, I mean, I don't know if that's good or bad. Like,
but that's what I'm saying. It's like trauma, but like, that was teaching you empathy, like that you were being a dick. Like, you should share your cookies, you know?
Yeah, I was being a butt. And now it's like, oh no, they're fine. Oh, don't let them cry. Like, it's like, man, like you gotta let somebody cry sometimes. Like my parents were super good about that. I'm so thankful that they did that. Because like when I was 18, I was like 25 already. Because like I had known what life is like. You know, like I remember when we were getting that apartment, we had to make up we had to like do some street smart stuff, you know? It's like common sense, critical thinking. That's what it gives you. Like you can't critical think for your kids so much. And then, I mean, I don't have kids, so I shouldn't be speaking of parenting, but I've dealt with enough younger humans to see the trends, you know, within business. And it's like,
I was going to say, cause sometimes, you know, I don't ever like, I don't have kids, so I can't speak on, you know, how it is to be a parent.
I feel like I would have a hard time because I feel like I would be a total bubble.
Well, and it also it takes a lot of mental energy to teach the child a lesson instead of being like, here, do this, keep yourself occupied, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's like you're constantly having to be on it.
And I just feel like, I mean, okay, so we'll go back. Well, that was a little sidetrack, but I think it's an important conversation. Maybe we'll bookmark it for another one. Where are we at?
You graduated WildTech and you started pulling transmissions, right, for your dad?
Oh, no, I was rebuilding.
Yeah,
so we were doing that. And then my dad gave me a raise when I came back from WildTech. Like, you went to school, and it was $500 a week straight. And you, at that time, we were living in an apartment, our first apartment. We had 2 dogs we had 3 dogs, but yeah, we didn't have Brutus there really that much. And
we had 3 dogs after you graduated. They weren't allowed to be in that apartment. And so, sorry. What is this? Carbonated water. So we ended up we got caught and we ended up having to build a little kennel out at your grandma's house to hold the dogs in because we were about to get kicked out. We had no money, nowhere to go. And that didn't work. Our crazy Gretchen dog jumped a 6-foot chain link fence and June bug, little 10-pound June bug, climbed up with her little toes.
I would chain Gretchen with a 3/8 chain to a post, and she somehow
shimmied it up.
I don't know. To this day,
How did
I
she
have
survive?
no idea how she got that chain off. But
yeah, she jumped every day and she jumped over every day, escaped. And then one day your grandma calls and said that she thinks she got hit by a car, but really she had a bunch of foxtails in her feet, had to get them removed. So after that, we ended up kind of like sneaking them into your parents' house at the Puffin house. And then like kind of lived there. Like we like snuck ourselves in and like just stayed there all day with the dogs.
Really?
And like slept in their living room
totally.
when they had the kids. We spent a bunch of time with the kids back then.
I would just sleep on the hard floor too.
Yeah. So that's where we're at. We were like, oh, we can't really stay at our house because of our damn dogs.
Yeah. Where was I at? I don't even know what we were talking about.
So that's where we were like in between like getting, and then we ended up finding a house and then we had a lot of bills to pay. after that? You were working at your dad's shop.
Yeah. So he was paying me $500 a week, but he was having trouble paying me the $500 a week, and we had bills. So I reached out. I got on Craigslist and found a shop that was hiring, Anderson Automotive. Shout out to Rick. And I sat there, and he he interviewed me. I was literally an 18-year-old kid. Might have been 19, somewhere in between there. And I was master certified with a SPOG license, but I'd never worked in a real regular shop before that wasn't my dad's. I remember during the interview, he asked me all these questions that I just happen to know the answer to. It's like the world.
By like a day, though, right?
Yeah. Literally, he was like, "How do you pull a fuel pump on a Ford truck?" I'm like, "Oh, you pull the bed," because we just did one like last week in my dad's shop, and so he hired me almost instantly. Like him and Howard, they interviewed me. I remember being so scared, and I went there. I remember the first day of work. Anderson Automotive was never very busy. It was really slow all the time. And they put me out in the shop with this guy named Joe. And I'm like 18 or 19. I can't remember. I think I was 18 still, maybe turning 19. And I'm just out here. And Joe's like an old grumpy dude. Like he's your typical, again, like he's like a Lou, but like maybe on steroids a little bit because he's not as nice. He's just staring at me, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, they don't give me a car. I'm just sitting there. Like, don't give me any direction.
You're like the newbie.
So I just like grab the mop, and I'm just mopping. And I just used to mop so much. But,
didn't you like paint a wall too?
Oh,
when
yeah,
you were
we'd
there?
do all sorts of stuff. And Rick had a race car, and we'd build that and stuff. A lot of older stuff. But I learned a lot. And I remember I did like my first timing belt on it was a PT Cruiser, which is like, if you don't know cars, PT Cruisers suck to do timing belts on. First one I ever did, and I just like went home and researched it, like acted like I knew what I was doing, got it done, no problem.
You used to dread them, but now you're like all about them.
Yeah, no. Well, once you get comfortable with something, and I worked there for a while, and then Rick was a hard guy to work for. Sometimes he would just he would always want to show you how to do it his way, and sometimes I'm like, well, why'd you hire me if you want me to do it this way And he had a lot of stress going on. His wife had just passed away before I started working there, and the shop wasn't going that great, and I think that was a lot of pressure on him. So I went and looked and found a different job in Red Bluff called Lead Automotive, and went there, gave Rick my notice. That was terrifying. Oh, my God. That's so scary.
Confrontation.
Yeah, that was always a problem for me. And then went to Lead Automotive. Showed up there, realized that Red Bluff is a lot different than Anderson. I'm like, I show up, and at the time, Nicole was driving a 92 Ford Escort that had been rolled by my friend, and I bought and like welded the strap back together, and we were driving it and had little fucking pony stickers in the back and stuff. I don't care. It's just how I am. And
shout out to Sasha Fierce. I love that car. Lots of memories.
And I showed up, and like all these dudes are driving like they're lifted like Dodge Dakotas, and like one dude had this massive Chevy truck, and then they all had these boxes in the back. And come to find out over the coming weeks, it was like they had hounds in the back because they would hunt bears, and they used the hounds to like hunt the bears. That's not something I've ever done.
And you're like the skater boy in your
Vans. I showed my Vans, like, but we just got along, man. It was so cool. They would like play country music hella loud, and like they're all wearing their Wranglers and like spit and dip and stuff. And I was just like, I get along with everybody. I loved them all, dude. I learned so much there. Loved it there. It just went well. And
yeah,
so
you were really happy as far as like the culture and the environment. You
country
loved
music.
it.
That's when I started liking country music, and I was like, yeah. I didn't get me a set of Wranglers, but
I tried one year. Remember, I bought you like a whole cowboy setup, and you were like, no,
I'd wear my
this isn't
Vans.
happening.
They'd all make fun of me. They'd all drink beer after work, and I'm like, and then I would, like just to get it fit in, and so loved it there. And then my dad closed his shop down, and he decided that he was going to go work at this place in Corning. So I went and helped him move his tools. And when I did that, the guy that owned it was like, hey, what are you doing? I showed some interest in this Pico scope, this piece of automotive equipment that's like for nerds, and I'm a total nerd like that. And he's like, hey, what are you doing, you know? And it's like, well, I work here. He's like, well, and then he shot me an offer, and I'm like, well, that's exciting. That's a lot more. And it was production based. So I'm like, hell yeah.
Yeah, because Elite, it was like, I think they did semi-monthly.
And it was hourly, and it wasn't that much. They didn't pay very well.
Yeah.
That was
and the semi-monthly was hard for us because we were like,
terrible
monkey see, monkey
life.
spend.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, and so shout out, moved to Corning Auto Center, and that was fun. My dad worked there with me, that was just weird because he had one view of things and I had another view, and he can be, he hated the advisor, and I didn't really feel that way, but then I did because he did.
You definitely did not like working there.
I hated it instantly.
Yeah.
But that was not because of the advisor. That was because of some other people working there. And that was also just because I was young. New things are always scary. Mm-hmm. I remember,
Change.
yeah. Oh my God, that first day there was terrifying and terrible. They gave me a 78 Ford pickup. I'm like, I don't fucking know. I'm fucking 20 years old. Like, why you give me a 78 Ford pickup? But come to find out, I wasn't as bad as I thought I was, and I would beat everyone on hours all the time. And I really liked the production-based pay because I could make more, and we made a lot there. I just hated the drive, and some of the culture there was different. We'd have meetings, and this all plays out when you own your own business because you think about this stuff. But we'd have meetings, and he would just tell us well, we only have $70,000 in the bank, and it was just negative. It's like, holy shit.
Never celebrating and just
never.
always making you feel like
we
you guys.
Get there. I mean, I lived in Cottonwood, and I'd drive to Corning to be there at 6:30 in the morning just so you could bitch about, in my eyes, $70,000 was a ton of money to have in the bank. What do you, holy shit. Anywho, so I liked it there, but it was all right. I ended up being pretty established.
It was more money. You're more money motivated, but the culture wasn't there.
Yeah, it wasn't right. And so we, in April 2013, we went to Cool April Nights Drags, which I never really do. I don't know why we did, but ended up seeing Rick, the owner of Anderson Automotive, and he offered me a job back right when I saw him there. Oh, Nick, we want you back, blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, okay, yeah, me and you talked about it. I can't remember specifics.
Well, because he was telling you that he wanted to sell it to you.
Yeah, and he had actually told me that when I interviewed with him the first time. He sat there, but I just thought he was full of shit.
And then when you quit, he was like,
you could have had this.
I was going to sell this to you. And we were like, nah, he's lying.
And I think he saw me as his way out, but he wasn't ready. And then now I left, and it was like, oh, shit, I better get him back. So I ended up, saying yes to that, and then...
And he was offering an owner carry.
Yeah, I don't think he even sped into that at that point. But, I mean, obviously we had no money.
Yeah.
So,
we were 21 years old.
Yeah, 21 years old. So in April 2013, I gave my notice at Corning Auto Center. And I did it freaking 3 days before I had to leave because I would go in every day at 6 a.m. and just be freaking terrified. I would just sit there at my toolbox and do nothing. I wouldn't tell him. And then I'd just do that over and over and over again for literally 2 weeks up until 3 days before. Gave my notice, and then he offered me a ton of money to stay. And I was like, fuck. I remember thinking why didn't you tell me that earlier, for one? And two, man, I already said yes to Rick because my brain was already on. And that's, when we've had employees leave, once they're set, you, at least in my eyes, but that number was good at that time. It was $10 more an hour than what I was making. And I was like, shoot, but my mom had always told me this thing when I was little. It was your reputation is everything. Your word is everything. And I just kept thinking about that. I told Rick I'm going to do it. That's my word.
Do you remember what was going on in your head as far as thinking about the future of owning a shop and what that would entail? What would that look like? Would you be this millionaire, or would you what would it be like?
I didn't even think about that really. I think at that point I wasn't even, it's hard for me to think.
I remember I was very against it. I was like, I don't want to do this because I wanted to move away. And obviously owning a shop, you would be locked in for quite some time.
I don't, even when I was going back there, I think I just didn't like to drive to Corning. It sucked. Me and my dad would get in the car and like, it just took forever. He had this old beater Honda at the time and it would always overheat, but, I just didn't want to drive that far, I think. And,
it had to have excited you in some way.
The culture there sucked at Corning. It was that beat me up a lot. And I think some of it was, honestly, my dad very negative about like the service fight. He's always kind of finding stuff that was wrong, and that would like weigh on me. And then just the drive too. But yeah, so Rick hired me back. I start working there. April, May, June comes around, July, and then about August, he's like, "Hey, I really want to sell this thing like now." I'm like, I literally have no idea.
It's weird because my memory, I just remember meeting him at the drag strip, him saying that, you going back and working at Anderson Automotive, and then it was like, it happened instantly. Like,
it was a few months.
Yeah, obviously, right between April and September.
Well, April, May, I might have started there in May, and then May, June, July, and then August it happened. So it was a couple months. But
I remember it was like
quick.
September 1st was like that's first day. Yeah.
And so he offered to sell it to us, and I sat down with my parents and asked him, and they were just like, yeah, like they didn't give me a huge amount of like.
You had like written down like these, I don't know.
His P&L was, I didn't know what we were doing.
No, you had like this scratch piece of paper, and you were like, I think you wrote down expenses or something, and it was just like.
I know. I wish we could find that manila folder. We should try to find that. And it's
probably still somewhere in one of
my. At that point, you
cabinets.
were like kind of involved, but you didn't really care that much about it.
No, I was like, should I come there? Like, we're gonna own it, and you're like, oh, it's weird. I don't know. Like, Rick's still
in the process
there.
of buying it, that's past. But like when we were buying it, it was like I invited my parents over, and you weren't really for it, or
no, I wasn't. I was hoping that you wouldn't want to do it. Because I so badly wanted to go move down south and go to a school called Moore Park. I was going to college to do that. I was going to Shasta College.
It's crazy how the world just does things for you sometimes, and sometimes it seems like they're like, this is a problem. Like, this is going to ruin everything I had planned, but really it's not.
Yeah.
There's
just so many different paths that we can take in life, and it's like just the fact that, that day that I got the call from PetSmart when I was visiting you, I was planning on moving with you. What would my life look like if I had done that? I wouldn't have become a dog groomer.
Or what if when Rick offered me that job, I just said no.
Yeah.
Or if that, when he offered me money, I was
or
just
we didn't go to the Cool April nights that day.
Yeah,
or
I
there's
didn't
so
move
many
my tools with my dad, or so many different pieces of that puzzle. And so, Rick, he sold us the business. I literally had negative $800. I remember I sold that Honda CRV to get enough to like just make my bank positive. I shout out to Tri-County's Bank because I went in there. They were in Walmart at the time. And I had to convince them to give me, I had gotten put into check systems. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that, but you shouldn't have heard of it if you have.
Yeah, you were like negative, 600, and you just left it. You weren't going to pay it back.
I moved to Chase Bank because they would give you like $100.
Oh, yeah, the $100 to sign up. I remember I did that too.
And I was just going to leave it. But then there's this thing called check systems, and you can't get bank accounts if they all talk to each other. It's like this whole background thing. But I had to convince them, like, hey, if I pay that off, well, can you let me open a business account? And they did. And we called it Jones's Anderson Automotive because we didn't really buy Anderson Automotive at that time. And, we opened up. The down payment for Rick was all of his parts bills. And then he set me up, I think it was $6,000 a month.
$6,000 a month, and it was for the business and the building. So,
which was cool.
It was a really great opportunity for him to have.
He gave me when you talk about people in your life that, I'm a big believer that everyone has opportunity. Some people take it, some people don't.
Why do you think he asked you? Do you think he asked the other guys that worked there?
I have no idea.
I always wonder that because there was 2 other guys working there.
There was Joe or Howard. Joe, he's an old guy. He was very much like a heavy line guy. He wasn't interested. I'm assuming Rick saw something in me that was different, man. Like we've talked about. I always had like a hustle and grind mentality. Like when I worked there, I don't work there and like not do work.
And the knowledge that you had too on cars.
At that point, I had worked on cars for 2 years.
And you were young. You were super young.
So I was about to. He's trusting me to pay him back $400,000 or $500,000 on 2 years experience, which is crazy.
And very little
we
life
get guys with
experience
2
at that
years
point.
experience, but at that point, I'm not trying to gloat, but I would say B+ or A level technician. I would diagnose anything. I could repair
when
it.
you worked at Corning, you were the highest producer every week. You got to pick lunch. I remember you would always be stoked about that. Like, I get to pick lunch again.
In the bowling alley, Corning bowling alley. But yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I always wonder that. I'm not a huge religious man, but like I know things happen for a reason, and something needed to happen there. And he, shout out, I got to pay him back a little bit just a few months ago, but that opportunity he gave me, I paid him back in full within less than 5 years, which is what he had set up, which was dumb. It was just me in the beginning. It was just me, my dad, and you.
Yeah.
And that $6,000 a month is not possible.
Yeah,
for people.
The shop was grossing less than $300,000 a year. So to pay $6,000 a month, you were doing a lot of car flipping.
Oh my God.
We were terrible with our money, so I'm sure that didn't even really help in the grand scheme of things.
Again, we planned to stop at that point, but the next 5 to 7 years of my life were so hard. So hard.
Also, too, shout out to Rick. He also helped us purchase our first home because we were in escrow literally days away from closing, and we ended up owing the IRS like $10,000. And
because of that 5 to 7 years that I'm about to talk about,
and
maybe the next episode or the one
and
after
he
that.
ended up loaning us that, and that was just like that was gonna kill the deal. And
it was, yeah.
We didn't have that money. You had already sold your old C10 that you had, and
I sold everything.
Literally
all my cameras.
We wrapped our pennies to buy our house.
We did.
So we didn't want to pay the whatever Coinstar, the percentage.
So it's like when that guy messaged me, "Oh, life must be easy." You're like, "Listen, motherfucker."
Say it to my face.
I've slept on the floor in a shop God, I used to flip cars like a mad dog. I'd have more flip cars at the shop than people's cars I'd be working on, because I just spent so much time on Craigslist because I knew I could make money at that. But
yeah,
that's for another episode, maybe the shop story episode. But that's kind of what we got there in the short, so you kind of get an idea of set the stage of who we are and everything. The light's getting bad in here too. I can tell.
It's dark. I know. I got to run before it gets dark. So like literal run, not like I got to run, but I got to go run
a few miles. But yeah, anything else you got to say? I think that kind of covers it, unless you have anything.
I did want to go into, I feel like I've heard, and we can maybe talk about this later, but I feel like hearing your stories of like the different things that you built as a kid, like I definitely could not relate to any of that. I didn't have Legos as a child because Legos were a boy's toy, not, I had Barbies. So I knew how to dress up my Barbies, but
hey, I had a, what's it called?
Easy Bake.
Easy Bake, yeah. My brothers all made fun of me.
I did my first Lego set like literally 2 years ago. It was the Friends little cafe.
Yeah, I used to just build anything. A lot of it was RC car stuff.
Hearing like your school projects and stuff. Like my dad always built all my school projects for me. It was always like 10 o'clock the night before, and I would just like kind of sit there and be like, "Yeah, that looks great.
Good job, buddy."
Good job, Dad.
He made a millennial child. Yeah, see, my dad would not.
But like to hear you because there was always that rocket project. Like you got to build a rocket. My rocket. My dad
the rocket
taped up. It looked like a wiener.
I never actually.
Your rocket, from your stories, was amazing.
It was cool, but it actually never came to fruition because I didn't go to school.
Oh,
but
shoot! Yeah, it was freshman year.
My idea was hear me out. My idea was you had to shoot a rocket up. I can't remember all the stipulations, but it was like it had to stay up in the air for as long as it could. So I was like, it had to be under a certain weight, I think. So I was like, all right, let's make a fucking basic rocket. I'm going to go buy a huge helium balloon, tie it to the rocket, and put a huge string on it. And by the time it shot up, you could calculate how much it would go down, and then it would just float away, and I would win because it would never come back.
That's some innovation right there. I love it.
Because when we were making the rocket, me and my friend Robert.
Let's do it, Nick. Let's make that rocket.
We should. But I had some RC car fuel. I put it in a 2-liter thing, and then I pointed it toward, we had a little ramp thing. I pointed it toward the dry field across the way, not thinking much. And holy shit, it took off like 100 feet. It blew, and it like shot like a rocket out the back of this 2-liter bottle because it was RC
so you've
fuel
caught
has
two fields on fire.
Shut up. It didn't actually catch fire. So, but
Good.
Anywho, building stuff, I would build like a luge board with my, like, I would like take my skateboard and like nail wood or screw wood to it to like I made a huge doghouse out of old drywall one time. I love building shit.
Didn't you do like, you kind of touched on it earlier, like your electrical, like you had some sort of
Yeah, for a
electrical
project
thing?
at school, I made a solar-powered RC car out of like just random bits. I remember the teacher was like, "What the hell?"
And your like stereo system in your room.
Yep, I had like a whole surround stereo.
And you were like 5.
Yeah, that was when I was like 10. Yeah, I just love like electricity has always been a thing for me. I should have been an electrician, but anywho,
Yeah, I wanted that, and also like we have so many dogs, and I feel like and we can get into this later, but they taught us so much. I feel like they're part of the reason why we grew up really fast.
I've always loved animals.
We've
ever
always
since I was
like
a young
acknowledged our dogs as our children and took total accountability for taking care of them, and not treated them like, oh, it's inconvenient, so let's rehome you.
Yeah,
You know?
no, that's not even an option. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, holy shit, we've done a lot. That is a whole longer thing.
Yeah,
we
and
are
we
pretty
can go
deep into this.
and we can
but
go into that. I mean,
mean,
I think every episode we're going to be talking about dogs.
I think one
so.
thing you just touched on though, I just gotta take. It's not really the dogs or the building shop. It's we don't give up.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not in my. When you say you can't do that, it doesn't even faze me. Like
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, whatever. It's gonna happen. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like if I want something to happen, it's gonna happen. I think that's a very beneficial piece to our story.
I remember when we were adopting June, I was fostering Junebug at
Fostered
PetSmart, Pets
7
Without
dogs.
Partners. Some lady, I was like, oh, I'm going to foster her. But of course, I had intentions to adopt. Some lady was like, oh, I have a feeling she's going to be back next week, insinuating that I was going to not keep her and bring her back. And that just pissed me off. And so I was like, I'm going to prove this bitch wrong. Like, I'm adopting this
Well,
dog.
I remember you always used to.
And she's 16 now. So
Yeah.
screw you, lady.
And I remember you always used to be like a naysayer. Like I would be like, well, no, like you can't get a house because we don't have, pay stubs. I'll just fucking make
Yeah,
some.
you made the pay stubs. I was very much like black and white, like, oh my God, there's no way we can, because we had to move out of that apartment and our rent was going from $600 to $1,100 a month. And we were like, oh my God, you were working under the table. And so hopefully the government's not listening into this, but you made your fake pay stubs and then we ended up getting getting the house.
We always
made
paid it
happen.
though, like that's the thing. I think if you lie, you don't do it, but I prefer not to do that. But if I gotta, if there's a
We had our
difference between
children at stake.
Yeah.
They needed,
I'm not gonna do anything that's gonna inability to
And like,
tell my
I feel
dogs.
like the fact that we had our dogs, it was always for the dogs. It still is always
Dude,
for
you
the
remember?
dogs.
I mean, I literally built a whole fucking the whole
The
thing.
kennel, yeah.
Oh my God! And then every day
The
we
farm.
drive 30 minutes to go out to it. Like everyone would give up there. We don't give up. So
Yeah.
if there's one life lesson, don't freaking give up
Yeah.
on anything. No is just,
that's your victim mindset.
that's your cue to just try again. That's just no means nothing.
No means, okay, I have to be more creative now and figure out how to get around this obstacle.
Exactly. No is such a. I like when someone tells me that. I just like it almost makes me go harder. But yeah,
That's like, it's probably like toxic, but like when someone doubts me, I'm like, I'll show you, bitch.
yeah, exactly. Like yeah, I
remember
go
someone
into that.
said that about Gretchen when I was
people
sneaking
have
her
said all sorts
into.
of
I mean, I
stuff.
shouldn't have. I was a 15-year-old kid sneaking in
Yeah.
a huge golden retriever into a tiny apartment. Like, maybe this isn't right for you. And I'm like, I'll show you. You just watch me do it.
Sometimes that bites you. Your biggest strength is always biggest weakness. But anywho, we've been going on for about an hour, a little over an hour, so I think that's good. Hopefully this recorded well. Like I said, the first one did not.
Yeah,
So,
and the sun's going down, so
and the
we'll
sun's
see.
going down. Yeah, I'll have lighting in the future.
But that looks cool.
It does.
It's starting to look a little more vibey in here.
For sure. I'll have lighting in the future. I hope I have these cameras set up correctly. We'll see. If not, this will be an audio only. But anywho, I'm going to play the good old music.
Sponsored by Ralph's Crispy Crunchy Chicken. That's one of our dogs, by the way.
Yeah.
He has a chicken company.
store.
He
Anywho.
sells it to gas stations.
Anywho, thanks everyone for watching and or listening. And we will see you